Yo folks, welcome back to a brand new video. I'm delighted to be joined by Mickey Weir. Thank you ever so much for joining me, Mickey.
No problem, thank you.
When did it become clear to be a professional footballer? Wanting to be a professional footballer?
I'll be honest, I never really looked at it to be a professional footballer. What I'd done was when I played for my school team at first, and then I played for my juvenile team back then. I just loved playing football. You know, I never ever looked and thought, well, I'm going to be a professional footballer, because I realised early on that I had a battle on my hand with obviously the size of me, that type of stuff, but I always just went out to enjoy it and work really hard, and everything I ever done was always, I gave everything, you know, and it just happened for me. I was fortunate to get the wee chance to play, become a professional, but I never ever really looked at it as I must be a professional footballer. No, I just gave everything for any wee football team I played for. I always made sure I was trained hard and kept myself fit, enjoyed it, and I think my attribute at that time was that I loved to win. I loved winning, you know. I had a horrible way of losing. I just couldn't handle losing, and when I looked further on, and as I got older, I realised that, you know, it's probably an attribute that kept me in good stead, you know.
I mean, surely you could have run under the player's leg.
That's right. Well, I've done that a few times as well, but a lot of people would remind me of that a couple of times. Yeah, but no, I was. As I say, I was a bit of a fitness fan when I was younger. I was always wanted to be fit. I always loved being fit, and my idea of the game of football was if I could play against an opponent and I knew I was running the streets 2 or 3 times a week, sorry, I always thought I had an edge on them, you know. I always thought to myself, I'd say, well, you might be a better player than me, but I'm going to be fitter than you, and that just stuck in my head. So that was the way I dealt with it.
Because obviously I'm quite small as well, and when I played, I was a winger, and they always used to have me. That was the only way they could get me.
That's right, you're too quick.
So you've made 158 appearances and you've scored 25 goals for Hibs. What goal stands out to you?
What goal stands out? Never looked at it as one. I think the problem with first goal, which I can't even remember to be honest, scoring for the Hibs, I think it would probably be my best goal. Ask me what one is, I haven't got a clue, but somebody reminded me a couple of weeks ago, I think it was in a local derby actually, I think it was against the Hearts, so
oh, wow.
I'll take that, but I couldn't really tell you which one it was, but I think just achieving, you know, what you set out to do is to score your first goal for the team that you supported as a young man and your family supported. I think that would probably be the best one, yeah.
Yeah. What was it like winning the League Cup in 1991?
Oh, it was great. It was an unbelievable year for us. You know, everything just seemed to fall in place. I was playing with a lot of good players who helped you along the line, and I think the biggest factor was the year before. Obviously, we had the takeover bid for Wallace Mercer, so I can remember coming back for the pre-season training with a real desire to do well, you know, and turn the club, because the club had been through a lot of turmoil over an 18-month period sort of thing, and people forget that we nearly lost the Hibs, you know. So exactly. My dad kept reminding me, and your friends kept reminding you about what, you know, how important it was to keep the Hibs going, and there was a lot of great people involved in saving the club, you know, and it wasn't the end till the penny dropped for me that, you know, I could lose the club that I've always loved, always supported and fortunate to play for, so that gave us an edge. But that year everything seemed to fall in place, especially for myself, because I stayed clear of injury for a long time, which was, I never stayed completely clear of it, but I got a good run of games, and that helped me, because all the way through I struggled badly, you know, with injury. But so that was a personal thing. It was a great year for me. Yeah.
What made you support Hibs and not another SPFL team?
Well, it was my family, you know. It was just, I was brought up with my granda, who was a massive Hibs supporter, and then my family. So you're just brought up with the tradition of Hibs. And I must say, when I went to Hibs when I was young, I think I like say Mr. Stanton, Pat Stanton, Jimmy O'Rourke, George Stewart. You know, I was very lucky to go into these guys. They were Hibs, you know. They were Hibs traditions. And they made you feel, you know, it's how important it was to play for the Hibs, you know, and so it just kicked on from there, my family, and then going into it and seeing these people who they've ran, you know, you ran your legs off for these people like Pat Stanley, like Jimmy O'Rourke, George Stewart. They were the making of me, and other players like Sir Paul Kanes and these type of guys that I believe they were the surge that gave us the belief that, one, you could play for Hibs.
Yeah.
You were good enough to play for Hibs, and they made you aware of, you know, the tradition and what it means to play for the club, you know, and that was a big thing for myself.
Did you ever see yourself supporting Hearts?
Absolutely no chance.
Correct answer. Best manager you've played under?
I think you've heard a lot of people say the same thing, you know. You always take something with every manager, you know.
Yeah.
I was lucky to play under Pat Stanton, who I learnt a lot from. Also, the lot of coaches, Jimmy O'Rourke was a great one for me, because Jimmy was small and he realised that, you know, he would give me wee tips on things. I think you could take everything out of every manager. You know, Alec Miller was a great tactician, he had a good idea of the game, so I learnt that side of it. And other managers, Alec McLeish at Motherwell for a small spell, you learn off everybody, if you're willing to learn, you know.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that aren't willing to learn. I was always willing to learn. I still speak about the things that Pat taught me way back when I was a 17-year-old, you know, said things to me, and Jimmy O'Rourke, who at that time, I was terrified of Jimmy O'Rourke. You know, I was absolutely terrified of Jimmy. Jimmy was always keep talking about the time when he used to give me a lift in the morning, because I stayed in Clermston, he stayed at Corstorphine, in a big fancy house in Corstorphine, Jimmy, at that time, and he used to remind me of that, you know. You're just a Clary boy now, and so I used to jump in the car, and honestly, Darren, I used to jump in that car, and if we had won, I used to feel okay. But I used to dread, and he would say to you, you know, how was you go last night? What was your score last night? And you say, well, I got beat. That was it. Never spoke to you all the way there. So when you went into the change rooms, so these wee things stuck in your head. So I used to jump in that car thing. If you won, you'd be delighted. You're waiting, I'm asking you, you know, so how'd you go? Oh, well, 1-2 now. And you go, thank goodness, because that was the kind of pressure that put on you, you know, because you got to remember these players are played in top level games for the Hibs, you know, European games, won cups, won everything, so that was the pressure they brought you up with, you know, and you had to, I always felt you had to stand up to that, and you had to be part of it, want to be like them type of thing, you know, so, but I learnt from everybody, because I was willing to learn from everybody.
And I'm presuming you need to play under pressure as well. Oh,
that's a massive part of the game, you know, and I don't think if you can't play under pressure in big games, and I don't think you'll survive, you know, because when you get to that level of football, that's what you train for, that's what you work for. But I also seen players who couldn't handle the pressure, you know, and they couldn't handle playing for the Hibs, because there's a lot of pressure in playing for Hibs, you know, there's a lot of expectations. And I still see it now. I still see players in it, and you kind of, since I was at the club, Dan, I was there since 16-year-old, 17-year-old, so I knew what it meant to play for the Hibs and the expectations that were there. And I also knew players within 2 or 3 weeks that were all good players, but I don't think they had the mental toughness to deal with the expectations of playing for Hibs, you know.
Yeah. Best player you've played with?
Best player I've played with, well, I've got to say this has changed. It's changed about 10 times, I think. But I think, believe it or not, when I first went to Hibs, the best player that played with Hibs was Pat Stanton. Was the manager. He was the best player in training. He was the best player. You could just see it and just thought, my goodness. You got to remember, my dad's hero was Pat Stanton. So
you've got to say nice things.
I've got to say that, you know, but it wasn't. It's not actually till you go along train with him. I was a young man, but actually train with Pat and that thing. My goodness, you know, he was an older man then. But what was he like at 20, 23 and 24-year-old? That was always going through my mind. So, but further as I went into my career, there was so many down that I played with, and I don't like to decry many of them, you know, because there's so many good ones, you know. I played with players like Eric Shadler and, you know, Arthur Duncan. All I was younger, really young, but I can remember the ability these guys had. And then you had, as I went further on, but if I was really going to throw one out, I always believed that the best player I played with at Hibs, are you talking about at Hibs?
Yeah.
Yeah, was Stevie Archibald. Because when Stevie came, it was a kind of been there, done it, you know, had the t-shirt,
yeah,
had the class, and when I played alongside, yeah, had the ability, had the experience. So when you played with them, you just realised just how good these guys were, you know. And he was, I don't know, maybe 31, 32 at the time, something like that. But it was the same. I just thought to myself, God, how good were these guys when they were at their peak, you know. But in terms of an all-round player and what I learnt of him and watching his game, I would think Archibald would be up there. Yeah, I think Archibald.
Best player you've played against?
Best player I played against? This has changed so much as well. So many as well. There's so many of them. Well, the obvious ones would be like your Paul Gascoignes, you know, and Brian Laudrops. But I can go further back. When I always mind I playing a local derby, and Sandy Jardine played for Hearts. And before the game, he played at the back, and Sandy was in his late 30s at that time. I wouldn't know what age he was, but he was an older type, experienced professional. I remember playing in the derby, and the manager saying, "Look, we've got Jardine at the back. He's lost his pace, and we'll be able to do this against him. We need to do that against him." And he absolutely strolled through the game. It was like a friendly to him. He was taking the ball off the goalkeeper in his 6-yard box and looking up and pinging balls, and I'm thinking, proper class, you know, real. So it always remind me of that, Sandy Jardine. It was when I got older I started to realise how good these players were. You know, he played in World Cups, you know, so I could go all the way back and all the way forward type thing. But I think Sandy Jardine, I'll never forget that, because to play in a local derby with that much composure and never looked flustered, you know, that tells you a lot. And so I always remind him. But as I say, I could go through loads and loads of players. But in terms of going back, Sandy Jardine, a wee bit further, Gascoigne, so many, damn, so many.
Did you get past them?
No, I never got past Gascoigne much. I actually played against him when he was a young man playing at Newcastle. He just came into the team, and I played in a friendly against him. And I remember saying to Martin Ferguson, my coach at the time at Hibs, I've played against this guy at Newcastle, young guy Paul Gascoigne. I said, Martin, he's the best player I've seen in many a year. And he said to me, yeah, we've heard about him. I said, well, I'll tell you what, you're going to hear more about him, because he looked quite fat, chubby. He did. He looked quite chubby, and I'm thinking, this boy can't be able to play football like that. But he was carrying, because he was young and he was quite chubby, you know. And I thought, and yet when he got about the pitch, I thought, my goodness, but you could just see there was something special there, you know.
I went in more food.
Aye, you're right. Aye, he liked his takeaways, but he could play. He could play a wee bit.
What about Sandy Jardine?
Sandy Jardine.
Did you get past him?
No, very often. No, he was, as I say, he had class all written about him. You know, just class. And when you're playing against these type of players, you just notice it right away. You know, they just know where to be. They can read the game. I say he was. I would never like to have seen him when he was 23, 24. He must have been. But you got to remember, I think I'm right in saying, Pat would be able to tell me better, that the two in the World Cup, the two fullbacks, Scottish fullbacks, Danny McGrain and Sandy Jardine, got voted the two best players in the World Cup. Now I think that tells you everything, Darren, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
You know, so Sandy, I'll never forget it. Sandy was unbelievable. That was late in his stage, so I'd like to have seen him when he was young.
Worst player you've played with?
Played with?
Yeah.
Oh, now you put me in this, Tracy. It was funny, I was telling a story a couple of months ago. I went to Millwall for a short spell, and with this guy that played up front. I don't mention his name because it's no right on the lad, but I remember playing in a training session, and Jimmy Nicholl was the manager.
Right.
So, and you're playing in the game, and I'm thinking, you know, this, he couldn't control the ball, he couldn't pass the ball, he couldn't run. So after that, I said to Jimmy Nicholl, I said, Jimmy, I said, the kit man's he's a kit boy's some boy, isn't he? I said, what kit boy are you talking about? She said, the boy that played in the game, the boy that played in the 7-a-side. I said, the guy there, the kit man, you see the kit man? He went, no, we've just signed him. For decent money. And I'm thinking, my goodness me, but that was a shock, and he was so far. And you get it, when you get to that level, Darren. When they come at that level of football, you'll get found out very quickly. You know, if you're in amongst really good players. But that was a shock to the system. Here's me thinking it was a kit man he was playing, but that was one to remember. That one, yeah.
Worst player you've played against?
Played against? Oh. I wouldn't say they were worst players because...
Oh, toughest.
Yeah, I don't like to say they're worst players because, you know something, an old coach said to me many years ago, there is no such thing as a bad professional. You know, they're professional football players, and no matter how much people can have a go at them, Darren, you know, can say, oh, I'm better than him. It takes a wee bit more to become a professional football player rather than just skill and ability, you know, so... but the one boy I played against, and he was actually, he was more tough than a player, was a boy called Shuggy Burns.
Right.
Shuggy Burns, and I just used to think to myself, all he done was kick you. You know, he never tried to play any football, he just kicked people, you know, and I never got my mind around that. I used to say to myself, there's more to football than just kick. Because I was fortunate to play with the great Eric Shadler, you know, not play with him, but being involved in him as a young boy. And Eric Shadler was hard as nails, but he was still decent, he was still a good player, you know, maybe not to the John Brownlees as well that Pat talked about, but he could still play, because you don't play that level of football if you can't play. But Shuggy Burns was baffling for me, because I used to think to myself, you must be able to play football rather than just kick people, and you know. But so that was one. I wouldn't say it was a real, as I say, because there is no such thing as a bad professional, you know. They're playing at a good level, you know.
Did you get kicked off them?
Oh, many times, many times in there. I got a few kickings off him, but back in the day, Darren, the game was different then, you know. There was players in every club that could put themselves about, and that was in my era. If you're looking at like Pat's era, you know, there was some real tough players in, like your Alec Cropleys and these type of guys that could give it out, but they could take it as well. But that was a game then, you know. The game's speeded up now. The game's more, it's all technical and it's about fitness and that, but
and it's a wee bit soft at times.
It is a wee bit, because the game's so quick now, you know. The players have to make a tackle now, the referee's down their back, but back in the days, centre halves and midfield players, they could all make challenges and they could impose themselves in the game, you know. Whereas I don't think nowadays that's as much, you know.
No. Who were your footballing idols?
Football idols?
Yeah.
Well, I've got to say Alec Edwards of the Hibs. Just because I loved watching him playing. I just loved watching him. I used to go along to watch him and I watch him playing. Great passer of the ball and control of the ball, just everything about him. But I've got to say the best, my idol, although I think it was many people's idols and at times it was the great Jimmy Johnston. You know, still the best football player I've ever seen. I've seen George Best, I've seen great players, but Jimmy Johnston was just like, he was exceptional just to watch him. I was very, very young, Darren, you know, but my dad used to keep saying to me, and I'm going to tell a story about it. We played in the reserves at East Road, and I was only maybe 17 or something, whatever, and we went to play Celtic. In those days, the reserve team, if the first team were playing, the reserves would play at Parkhead if the first team were playing at Easter Road. So we went to play Celtic at Parkhead, and I'm a young man, you know, and we used to get trialists in the days, Dan, because a lot of the teams, when they be able to fill the reserve teams up, so we'd bring trialists into play, you know, to see if they could become a professional football player. So we got a lot of trialists. So I'm playing against Celtic and doing the warm up and that, and I just looked to my right hand side and I thought, am I seeing things here? Jimmy Johnston. Now he was something like late 40s. Something like that, 42, whatever it was. But he was on the coaching staff at the time, and he used to coach. But they'd run out of players. So he must have said, I'll play. You know? And Darren, honestly, he was miles ahead of anything on the pitch. And he was still going by people. Like, he just had that wee natural. And I'm thinking to myself. So I remember going home and saying to my dad, Dad, you'll never guess who I played against today. And he said to me, who? I said, Jimmy Johnston. And he went, Jimmy Johnston? He's the best player you'll ever play against, son. And he was right there. See, when you're talking about great players I played against, Jimmy Johnston only played for, I think he played for about 60 minutes, but even then I'm thinking to myself, how good is this guy? What was he like when he was 24, 25, you know? Exceptional. You've got to remember, these guys, he played at Real Madrid when the whole of the Real Madrid supporters stood up and clapped him. He was that good. Now, for to do that in Real Madrid, and they've seen some great players like Pat was talking about, you know. Jimmy Johnston went there and played for Celtic, and the whole of the stadium got up and clapped him because he was that good. They were that impressed with how good a player he was. Jimmy Johnston was just, as I say, unbelievable. If you go and watch his videos, I watched his videos, and it was just great to watch. It must have been great to watch him as a Celtic supporter, just paying in to watch him play, you know.
First football memory?
First football memory was the European tie at Easter Road. My granda, aye, got to watch the great Paddy Stanton and Jimmy O'Rourke and all that. Can't remember who they played against. I can just remember the strips. They were a sort of sky blue strip European tie, and it was just one of the magical nights, you know, in European football. Brings that to it, doesn't it? Brings that, and I just remember the feeling, the floodlights, and watching European players playing against the great players that we had at the time, Paddy and Jimmy and Alan Gordon, Alex Edwards, you know, Cropley's. I was lucky, Darren, you know, I was brought up with these exceptional football players that played for my club, you know, played for a club that I want to watch. Another thing being is, I never thought in unearthly that I'd be able to play on the same pitch for the Hibs, you know, so it shows you, if you're working that you're dedicated enough, you get your best shot, you just never know where it'll take, you know.
Well, that's very true. I mean, my dad can remember like the likes of Pat Stanton.
Ah, incredible, unbelievable.
Who was the worst dresser?
Oh, there was a few of them. Worst dresser. I better watch what I'm saying here because I got myself into trouble.
You're not putting yourself in that?
No, I could be bad as well. I'm not shirking responsibility of a bad jacket here and there, or trousers or jumpers or whatever. Worst dresser was a guy called, I hope he doesn't watch this. There was a guy called Andy Mullen who came to Hibs, and by the way, a very good player, Andy Mullen. But he was always so plain, you know. He was always plain, just like. And I used to get a bit of ribbon at the time, Andy. But he was a very good player. So he was up there. I wouldn't say he was the worst dresser, but he used to get a bit of stick. But everybody got stick for it, you know. So it was just part of the changing room environment. But Andy was always pristine, always shirt. He was always a shirt and nice trousers and things like that. We were all kicking about with tracky bottoms on, jeans and that. He always looked smartest, but he actually got a stick for being smart. I mean, that, so that was the way it was.
Best dresser.
Best dresser. Oh, there was a few. There was a few. It was good dresser. It all depends what type of dressing you like, eh? I'd have played with a wee guy called Callum Milne. Played with the Hibs. You'll remember Callum. Callum was a very good player actually, and a good lad as well. And he always dressed quite well because he was into sort of casual gear. You know, he was into Lacoste and all that type of stuff. So I always looked at him. He was a decent dresser. I would go for wee Callum. There was a few, but there were all type of dressers, eh? You know, there was ones that came in sort of flash and with the shirts on and the nice jumpers and things like that. But as a wee casual looker, wee Callum would be up there. Wee Callum was a decent wee dresser.
Thought you would have put yourself in that category.
Yeah, well, I had some bad gear at the time, Darren. I look back now, I think, what were you up to? You know? You
were only young.
I was only young, aye. Thanks, Darren.
Who was the hard man in the team?
Oh, there was a few. What team are you talking about all the way through? Well, I think we spoke about him. The hardest guy that I was terrified of was Eric Shadler. I was terrified of Eric. But Eric actually made a few of us, Darren. You know, Eric made myself, definitely myself, Kano. He gave us good habits. He told us about, you know, how well you need to look at training and going into the gym as well. Because we never had all the gyms I've got nowadays, but we've always done the speedball and we've done. People forget how hard you've got to work to get there, Darren. You know, we worked hard, myself and Kano's and that, because I knew right away I've got to work hard because I'm 5'1" with my hands stuck, you know. So
I'm surprised Kano actually worked hard.
No, Kano was a good trainer, but they were all good trainers, Johnny Collins and that. So there was a lot of good trainers. But if I'm looking at the guy that I looked up to back then, when I was younger, and I had a lot of good. I've always said there were a lot of good professionals beside me who helped me. Benny Brazil, Gordon Ray, good professionals, Eric Shadler, and Arthur Duncan, way back. I played with Arthur Duncan, could you believe that? Shows you how old I'm getting, eh?
Darren Jackson.
Aye, they were all good trainers, all good trainers.
I thought you played
Darren, but I'm going way back, but for me, Eric Shadler was the person that you looked at and thought, that's what I want to be like, you know. He drummed into you, you've got to be fit, you've got to be strong, you want to be, you know, get in the gym, and he would say stuff to you, and he would always ask you, you've been in the gym today? And he got that into your head, you know. So I believe we were all good trainers because there was a lot of good professionals at the club.
Yeah.
Taught you good habits, Gordon Ray, Benny Brazil, all these guys, all good professionals, Darren. In any club, you need good professionals to learn off. But if you've got the other way, and you've got bad professionals,
you become shit.
You just become normal. You just become like them. And that's a recipe for disaster, I believe. You know.
Oh well, I thought you would have put yourself in for the hard man.
No, me, no. I used to kid on a bit, you know, but no, I wasn't a fighter.
Who was the joker?
There was a few jokers, but the one that used to always make me laugh was, and it still does today, it was Joe Tortolano. Joe Tortolano was just, he used to say things, Darren, he used to have me in pieces. He'd be in a team talk and he would nudge you and say something, you know. And it was one particular story, but we played a game up quickly, we played at Easter Road, and I think it was St Mirren, but anyway, back in the day though, Darren, when you were in the changing room, you could hear the teams getting read out, and you could hear the sort of applause towards each player. And as you know, some supporters like you, or some supporters didn't like you, so they would have a wee boo. So I mind one game where we're listening to the teams coming out, and it was number 2 so and so, number 3, and it come to number 4 or whatever it was, and he got a bit of a boo, you know, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh, that's not nice, you know. And Joe quickly nudged me and went, wait for it, wee man, wait for it, it's coming. And his number came out. And you just heard this big almighty boo. And Joe went, tell you, wee man, that's before the game even starts. So these are the type of things that we Joe would come out with, but he just could laugh at himself, Darren. And I think there's a lot of people in the game that kind of laugh at themselves. You know, Pat was talking about Jimmy Rourke. Jimmy was fantastic as a coach, he was brilliant, but he could laugh at himself. You know, he didn't mind you having a go at him. Ken, you could say something to him and he never took it, you know, personally. Until we got you in the gym at 3v3s. Then he would kick lumps at you for the next half an hour. But so I like the people that could laugh at themselves, you know.
Well, exactly. When you finished football, is it true you kept Greyhounds?
Yep, I kept Greyhounds, yep. I had Greyhounds for years. Unfortunately the sport is dying, and it's dying now, you know. The game's completely finished. I done it because I liked the hobby. Before that, when I was younger, I was brought up in Granton in the West Pilton. I kept pigeons. I kept the horseman birds that they're called. Pat would remember them in Nidri. There was a lot of boys that kept the pigeons, so I was brought up with pigeons, you know. But when I left my gran's, where I couldn't keep them anywhere because we got a complaint about the birds, I got rid of the birds. So I was just looking for another hobby, you know, because I think it's good to have. Eric Shadler said that to me way back when I was young. Try and get yourself a hobby, Michael. Try and get a hobby and something away from the game, and I always kept it on board, Darren. You know, I always kept saying to myself, you know, he's right. So when I got the pigeons, I couldn't get them where I was. So I went to Wally for dogs with my dad and that, because my dad was a bit of a Del boy, shall we say. You know, he was into everything, horses, dogs, anything. So I went to Walliford with him, Walliford Greyhounds, and I just got roped into it like you do, you know. And I just wanted to learn how to feed them, how to walk them, train them, and I just got obsessed with them for years. And the thing was, the worst thing about it, Darren, was everybody thought you were into the dogs for the gambling. You know, because that's just the way it was back then. It was Powder Hall was a big.
You weren't?
No, I wasn't. I loved the dogs. I loved the dogs, training them, feeding them, you know, looking after them. I just loved that side of it, you know. My dad and that, they were mad. They'd bet 2 flies going up the wall, you know. But myself, I was more into it for the sport. And I look at it now and it saddens me to see, you know, we've not even got one. When I first went in it, there was like 50 odd tracks in Scotland. And then now we've not got a track, you know, and it's sad to see. But that's just how the world's changed now so much. But back then, greyhound racing was big. You know, Powder Hall, we'd go to Powder Hall and there was like maybe 5,000, 6,000 people there on a Saturday night. It was like a football match. But I've seen the good times yet, and it just saddens me. I still keep in touch, I still like to watch them and that, but it really saddens me to see how far it's went down the way, you know.
So obviously when you couldn't keep your pigeons, does that mean you lost your girlfriend?
I lost that, yeah, that was it. I lost everything. So I just ended up with the dogs, Speak to my dogs. So thanks for reminding me about that, Darren.
Worst celebration?
Oh, I had a few shockers. I think when you score in games like that, any games,
you just
you lose the plot. You definitely lose the plot, and I lost them a few times. I did a couple of times with the Hibs. But I did one for Motherwell. I had a mad celebration at Motherwell. We went up to Aberdeen and we beat Aberdeen at Aberdeen, and I done this stupid, I don't know what I was trying to do. I was trying to be a pigeon or something like that. So Oni Coyle and these type of guys gave me so much stick after it. I didn't even know what I was doing, you know what I mean? I was just walking about like, what are you doing? And I got off the pitch, I looked back at it like, oh, that's bad. That's so bad, you know. So I got abused for it, but hey, well, you do these stupid things. But in that moment, Darren, you know,
anything goes out of the way.
It goes for it. I see some players now when people say, look at these things he's doing, but it's just something that unless you've experienced it, it's hard to let people understand, you know. In that moment, you're scoring a goal, or your teammate scoring a goal. Just something can take over, you know. But I would rather that than losing a goal. You know, losing a goal is a bad thing.
Best celebration?
Best celebration? I think the celebration for myself wasn't. I wouldn't call it a celebration, Dan. I call it relief. Was the semi-final, the Skull Cup against Rangers at Hampden. Because at that time, Rangers were a really good side, as you know, and but I was very confident we could beat them if we turned up on the night. We had good players and we had boys that were, and you need everybody to be sort of in cohesion with each other, you know, everybody to be playing well, and we were on a good run, and I thought we had no better time for us to go and beat Rangers. They had a good side, we knew we were up against it, but I was confident, Dan, I was so confident, you know, so I thought if we turn up. But anyway, I remember after the game, just the elation of thinking, you know, we're now in a cup final. Seen the support there. Although that night I don't think there was a bigger support, but I knew what was coming, Dan. You know, I knew, you know, we've achieved something here, and what's the support going to be like in the final? And I just remember sinking to my knees, and I was in tears. I was absolutely. Because
you had your head in your hand.
I was a mess, but it was just all the emotions. What the club had went through for 18 months, 16 months, seeing grown men cry about their club, you know, chance of losing their club, and just everything caught up with you. It was a bit like when they won the Scottish Cup, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody, that feeling that night at Hampden Park was special, and it was just everything that come round about the game, you know. But the winning it was the most important, Dan, you know.
Is it true that you scored in every round of the Skull Cup?
I can't remember that. I don't think so. I don't think. Keith Wright done a lot of the scoring at that time. Keith Wright scored a lot of goals. I don't think I scored in every round. But
did
being
you
part
score in the final?
No, I never scored. But I think being part of it is the most important for me, Dan. I never ever looked at if I scored, I just wanted to be in the winning team. You know, if it's all about, football's all about being in that winning team and playing in big games, winning big games, you know, and who scores, that's great for a personal thing, but being in a winning team is the most important, Dan, you know.
Daftest moment in your footballing career?
Sorry?
Daftest moment?
Daftest moment? I think I've got one that would win hands down. Was I had a bit of a set to with the manager, and he played me in the reserves. He put me in the reserves to play against St Johnstone at Easter Road, and I was angry, Darren. You know, I was really angry, and I think any football player's been through that. So he put me against St Johnstone in a reserve game at Easter Road, and we had a Scottish Cup guy next week, and I got sent off in the reserves for a stupid tackle. But it was just frustration, just being angry about things that were going on at that time. And I went into the game, and my mind wasn't on it, Dan, you know. And the referee gave a stupid decision. I confronted him, he booked me, and then 2 minutes later on I went for a tackle that I shouldn't have went for. I got sent off, and that was probably the worst weekend of my life in football. Was that weekend? I had the embarrassment of being sent off in a reserve game, having to tell. I was hiding it for people, Dan. I wasn't telling people, you know. So I'm thinking they mightn't come out, you know. I might be all right, but it didn't come out. Managers pulled me in, and I was embarrassed to the lowest. That was the lowest of the low, getting sent off in a reserve game. And the thing being is, I missed the Scottish Cup the next week, you know. So I got heavily fined, and it was a real low point, but I grew up after that. I really did grow up after that, because I thought, you know, I can't go on like this. My dad gave me a bit of set too. He had the heart to men, told me, you need to sort yourself out, you know, blah blah blah. Which you do need, Dan. You always need somebody to give you that wee jolt. My dad done it to me, and I went to other people who gave me good advice. Ralph Callaghan at the time gave me great advice. People, experienced players. And you need to have that. You need to have somebody that you can go, and they gave me advice, and then I kicked on for there. I thought that's not happened to me again. But that was a bad time. That was the worst decision. Definitely.
Who had the worst patter?
The worst patter? Worst patter? There's been a few. Who would I say? Darren Jackson thought he was funny.
He wasn't really.
It was about as funny as a punch in the face, you know. Darren thought he was funny. In his own way, he thought he was funny, but he used to laugh at his own jokes, and that's always a bad sign, Darren. You know, when you laugh at your own jokes, it's a bad sign. So I would say he was funny, but there was a lot of them with bad patter. But Darren would be in there. Hope he doesn't watch it because he'll batter me. But there was a few of them that had bad patter. But now I would go DJ, as I say, just simply because he would laugh at his own jokes. You know, it's never a good sign, I always felt.
No. Biggest high in football?
Biggest high in football? Always will be my first game for the Hibs. Don't know who it was against. Haven't got a clue. No, I could tell you my first game was actually against Airdrie. And it was a League Cup sections. The great Pat Stanton, the manager, asked me to play at left back for Hibs. And I said, yeah, I'll play at left back. I would have played anywhere, Dan. You know, so that was a highlight. And you know something, Dan, I would have settled for that. I would have settled for playing for the Hibs, just playing for the Hibs maybe 10 times. Saying that I've actually wore the first team jersey.
Yeah.
So away back then, imagine me getting asked to play at left back, you know, and if I'd have said no, there was no way. He said to me, you want to play in goals, I would have played in goals. I just wanted to play for the Hibs and get my family to say I've actually played for the first team. So I would say that was my most joyful moment, yeah.
Biggest disappointment in the game?
Injuries. 100%. Pat was speaking earlier about, and I always remember it, the great man Tam McNiven.
Right.
That Pat talked about, he was our coach at the time, our sort of trainer at the time. They called him the trainer. He was a trainer, physio, rub man, he was everybody, Tam McNiven, you know. And but what happened, we used to do what was called a running circuit round Easter Road. It was Eddie Turnbull running circuit. Pat would remember it as well. So what we'd done was we'd gone round the track. It was all different stations done, you know, right round the park. But we were actually jumping over hurdles with medicine balls, you know. So anyway, we were doing the circuit, and it was a hard session. It was hard. But I jumped over this sort of hooped sort of hurdle type thing. It was with a medicine ball, and when I landed, my back locked on me, and my back went on me. And I was screaming and I was in agony, but it didn't matter, and, so I got taken to Leith Hospital. I remember Tam coming down to me, and he'd obviously had a look, or maybe got a scan or whatever they did in the days, but he had a look at it and he said to me, you're always going to have problems with your back, Michael. And I was only young at the time, Dan, you know, but he said to me, you're always going to be, because of the shape of it, whatever it was, you're always going to have problems, you need to manage it. You need to be able to just manage it. I was devastated, Dan. I went home, I was devastated. But I kept it to myself and I thought, no, I'm just going to keep my head down here and keep going. So, injury completely destroyed me, to be fair, because I was going home for training, lying on carpets and just lying on my back and stuff that people never really see. And I think a lot of players go through that. Not just me, there's probably loads of players done it. But the one thing I'm proud of is I actually got through it. I played as many games as I possibly could within what I could handle physically, you know. So that was the biggest disappointment, was the amount of injuries that I got through my career. Because I wanted to, my figure was to make 400 appearances for Hibs, or 500, you know. But I knew at an early stage that it was never going to happen. So I learned how to manage it. To the best I could. So that was the most disappointing thing in my career, was the amount of injuries that I had all the way through, and having to hide for people things, you know, not telling them. You know, I would phone up and say I've got the flu and things like that, and I was lying in my bed, lying there, so many things. But definitely the biggest disappointment was the injury.
Biggest poser?
Oh, biggest poser? Well, there's one. Yeah, here we go, let me think. Poser. Played with a few of them, played with a right few. Who would I say, poser? I always thought Tam McIntyre was a bit of a poser. Tam was it was a good thing. It didn't bother me, but he liked to look clean and he liked to look, you know, that type of aye. Tam was a good player though. Good player, Tam. I hope he's not watching as well. But I always find he was. I wouldn't say it, but he just liked to look good, you know. And I didn't go with me, Darren. You know, I was more a West Palton Clermison boy. You know, just. I wouldn't call it that, but I never had fancy suits and nice jumpers and things like that. You know, as Pat used to say to me, when he phoned my house, we used to reverse the charges. So I was brought up with that. So I suppose that is probably the wrong word, you know, but they just like to look good, you know, and I had my own way about that. So, but Tam, there was a few others, but I'll not name them. So Tam, if you ever watch this, I'm sorry, but you were the poser.
No, but it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure, Dan. Thanks very much.
So guys, if you have enjoyed the video, please subscribe, please smash a like. How many likes are we going for?
I think it was 50, wasn't it? Was it 50?
No, that was 4.
I would say 200 likes.
Aye. Let's hit 200 likes. Thank you.